Sometimes greed blinds us to the very foundations that made our success possible. When Victoria Chen forced out her business partner of 12 years to claim full control of their tech startup, she never imagined the devastating chain of events that would follow. The venture capitalist she desperately courted didn't just reject her pitch. He chose to fund her ousted partner instead, exposing a web of embezzlement that would land Victoria in federal prison. This is the story of how ambition turned criminal, how betrayal became evidence, and how the pursuit of total control led to total destruction in Silicon Valley's most shocking corporate fraud case. Chapter 1. The Silicon Valley Dream Team. The partnership between Victoria Chen and Rachel Yamamoto began in a cramped garage in Sunnyvale, California, where two Stanford computer science graduates believed they could revolutionize data security. It was March 2016 when they incorporated Data Vault Technologies, pooling their combined savings of $37,000 and a shared conviction that traditional encryption methods were becoming dangerously obsolete in an era of quantum computing advancement. Victoria brought the business acumen that every tech startup desperately needed to survive Silicon Valley's brutal ecosystem. Her MBA from Wharton complemented her engineering background, creating a rare combination of technical understanding and strategic thinking. She possessed an almost supernatural ability to translate complex cryptographic concepts into compelling narratives that made venture capitalists reach for their checkbooks. Her presentations transformed mathematical algorithms into stories about protecting democracy, safeguarding personal privacy, and preventing the next major data breach that would inevitably dominate news cycles. Rachel represented the technical genius that gave Data Vault its competitive edge. Her doctoral research in quantum-resistant cryptography had caught the attention of the National Security Agency, though she declined their recruitment efforts in favor of entrepreneurial freedom. While Victoria charmed investors at networking events, Rachel spent 18-hour days perfecting the encryption protocols that would eventually protect data for Fortune 500 companies. Her code was elegant in ways that only other programmers could fully appreciate, creating security architectures that seemed to anticipate threats before they materialized. Their complementary skills created a synergy that transformed Data Vault from a garage startup into a company worth serious attention. By year 3, they had secured contracts with 2 major banks and a healthcare conglomerate, generating annual revenues of $12 million. The tech press began featuring them as the exemplary founding team, 2 women who had cracked the notoriously male-dominated cybersecurity industry through sheer competence and revolutionary technology. Success, however, began revealing philosophical differences that their early survival mode had masked. Rachel believed in sustainable growth, reinvesting profits into research and development to maintain their technological advantage. She advocated for careful client selection, working only with organizations whose values aligned with their mission of democratizing data protection. Her vision centered on building a company that would still be innovating decades into the future. Victoria's ambitions operated on an entirely different scale and timeline. She studied how competitors had leveraged aggressive expansion into billion-dollar valuations, regardless of profitability or long-term sustainability. Every board meeting became a battlefield where she pushed for rapid scaling, arguing that market dominance mattered more than perfect products. She wanted Data Vault to become the next unicorn startup, even if that meant compromising the careful engineering standards that Rachel considered sacred. The tension crystallized around their Series B funding round, a $50 million opportunity that would determine Data Vault's trajectory for the next decade. Marcus Webb, managing partner at Apex Ventures, had expressed serious interest, but his term sheets came with conditions that split the founders. He wanted aggressive expansion into markets that Rachel considered ethically questionable, including contracts with governments known for surveillance overreach. While Rachel spent her evenings refining their quantum encryption algorithms, Victoria began conducting meetings that never appeared on official calendars. She cultivated relationships with board members individually, presenting financial projections that painted Rachel's cautious approach as an existential threat to Data Vault's survival. These sessions took place in private clubs and expensive restaurants where Victoria carefully planted seeds of doubt about her partner's ability to navigate the company's growth phase. The documentation would later reveal that Victoria had been planning her coup for 6 months, accumulating leverage through careful manipulation of corporate bylaws and strategic alliances with investors who valued growth over ethics. She studied the partnership agreement with the intensity of a prosecutor preparing for trial, identifying obscure clauses that could be weaponized when the moment arrived. Chapter 2. The Calculated Betrayal. The boardroom at DataVault Technologies had witnessed countless presentations, but nothing quite like the ambush that unfolded on a Thursday morning in September 2023. Victoria Chen had orchestrated every detail with the precision of a military strategist, from the timing that ensured Rachel would arrive last to the carefully prepared packets that painted her partner as an existential threat to the company's survival. Rachel Yamamoto entered the room expecting a routine quarterly review, carrying her laptop with the latest encryption benchmarks that demonstrated their technological superiority over competitors. Instead, she found 7 board members studying financial projections she had never seen, their faces wearing expressions that ranged from concern to barely concealed hostility. Victoria stood at the presentation screen, dressed in the power suit she reserved for the most critical investor meetings, her expression professionally neutral in a way that made Rachel's stomach tighten with immediate dread. The coup began with Victoria's presentation titled, Securing DataVault's Future, a masterpiece of corporate manipulation that would later become evidence in federal court. She had spent months doctoring internal metrics to suggest that Rachel's research and development spending was hemorrhaging money rather than building the intellectual property that gave DataVault its value. Graphs showed fictional declining productivity in the engineering department, carefully edited to remove the context that the team was developing breakthrough technology that wouldn't generate revenue for another fiscal year. Victoria's most devastating weapon was a series of emails she presented to the board, correspondence that appeared to show Rachel refusing lucrative government contracts worth $30 million. What Victoria didn't reveal was that she had edited these communications, removing Rachel's legitimate concerns about selling encryption tools to authoritarian regimes that would use them to suppress dissidents. The selective editing transformed principled ethical stands into what appeared to be reckless disregard for shareholder value. The financial documents Victoria distributed contained subtle but critical alterations that would eventually attract FBI attention. She had moved development costs from the research budget to operational expenses, making Rachel's department appear to be burning through cash without producing tangible assets. In reality, those funds had created 3 patents that industry analysts valued at $40 million, intellectual property that Victoria had already begun secretly negotiating to sell without Rachel's knowledge or consent. Board member Harrison Blake, whom Victoria had cultivated through months of private dinners and strategic information sharing, delivered the killing blow. He cited a partnership clause from page 47 of their incorporation documents, a provision about irreconcilable strategic differences that allowed for the removal of a founder with a 2/3 board vote. Rachel recognized the setup immediately. This obscure clause had been Victoria's addition during their last legal review, insisted upon as a standard precaution that would never be invoked between trusted partners. The vote proceeded with mechanical efficiency. 5 hands rose in favor of Rachel's immediate removal, with only 2 members expressing reservation about the suddenness of the action. Rachel sat frozen as Victoria explained the transition plan she had obviously been refining for months. Her equity would be bought out at a rate based on the doctor valuations, roughly 1/3 of the company's actual worth. Her access to company systems would be terminated within the hour. Security would escort her from the building she had helped build from nothing. But Rachel's shock transformed into something sharper when Victoria made a critical error. In her eagerness to seize complete control, she mentioned negotiations with new investors that had supposedly been hindered by Rachel's conservative approach. The problem was that these negotiations had occurred during a period when Victoria had sworn she was at a digital wellness retreat with no internet access, her alibi for missing Rachel's mother's funeral. That single inconsistency sparked Rachel's suspicion that this betrayal might run deeper than strategic differences. During her forced exit, Rachel activated the personal audit protocol she had built into DataVault's systems years earlier, a security measure designed to detect internal threats. As she packed her desk under security supervision, her phone silently downloaded financial records that would eventually expose not just professional betrayal, but criminal fraud that had been funding Victoria's power grab for over 18 months. Chapter 3: When the Hunter Becomes the Hunted. Marcus Webb had built Apex Ventures into a $3 billion fund by possessing an almost preternatural ability to detect deception in Silicon Valley's culture of aggressive optimism. The veteran investor had seen every variety of startup fraud during his 20-year career, from founders who inflated user metrics to CEOs who fabricated entire product lines. His meeting with Victoria Chen on October 15, 2023, would add another case study to his extensive collection of corporate malfeasance. Victoria arrived at Apex Ventures' Sand Hill Road offices radiating the confidence of someone who believed her victory was already secured. She had spent 2 weeks preparing a presentation that positioned DataVault as the cybersecurity investment opportunity of the decade, complete with hockey stick growth projections and strategic partnerships that existed primarily in her imagination. Her pitch deck contained 47 slides of carefully crafted deception, each designed to obscure the criminal activities she had been conducting behind the scenes. The first crack in Victoria's facade appeared when Webb asked about Rachel Yamamoto's departure. Victoria had prepared a response about divergent visions and natural evolution of leadership, but Webb's follow-up questions revealed he had already spoken with 3 former DataVault engineers who had resigned in protest after Rachel's removal. Their accounts painted a drastically different picture from Victoria's narrative of mutual professional separation. Webb's investment team had conducted their own due diligence, uncovering discrepancies that Victoria hadn't anticipated anyone would notice. The patents she claimed as company assets had been filed with suspicious timing, mere days before Rachel's termination, using research that predated Victoria's supposed innovation timeline. More damaging were the financial audits that showed unusual transfers to consulting firms that seemed to exist only on paper, shell companies registered in Delaware with no actual employees or legitimate business operations. The meeting's pivotal moment came when Webb produced a document Victoria had never expected to see again, an internal DataVault memo where she had explicitly outlined plans to dilute Rachel's equity through a series of complex financial maneuvers that bordered on securities fraud. One of Victoria's supposed allies on the board had provided it to Webb, understanding that association with Victoria's schemes could destroy careers throughout Silicon Valley's interconnected ecosystem. While Victoria stammered through increasingly desperate explanations, Webb's assistant was already on the phone with someone who would transform this from a failed business meeting into a federal investigation. The FBI's white-collar crime division had been monitoring unusual patterns in tech startup finances, and DataVault's irregularities fit perfectly into their expanding investigation of Silicon Valley fraud. Rachel Yamamoto, meanwhile, had spent the weeks since her termination building more than just a legal case. She had assembled DataVault's best engineers, who joined her in launching Quantum Shield Technologies, a direct competitor that would implement the ethical vision Victoria had betrayed. When Webb contacted Rachel that same afternoon, offering the full $50 million investment that Victoria had sought, the irony was complete. The investor had chosen the ousted partner over the one who had seized control through deception. The FBI's involvement escalated rapidly once Webb provided his evidence package. Special Agent Jennifer Martinez, who specialized in corporate embezzlement cases, found that Victoria's fraud extended far beyond what even Webb had discovered. The investigation revealed diverted customer payments totaling $3.2 million, funds that had been routed through a complex web of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus. Victoria's digital footprint became her undoing. Despite her technical sophistication, she had made the amateur criminal's mistake of conducting fraudulent transfers from her company laptop, leaving traces that forensic accountants could follow like breadcrumbs. Her encrypted communications with accomplices in the accounting department, which she believed were secure, were decoded within days by FBI cryptography experts who ironically used techniques similar to those Data Vault had developed. By November, while Victoria was still trying to maintain the pretense of normal operations at Data Vault, federal agents were building an airtight case that would transform Silicon Valley's latest success story into a cautionary tale about how ambition without ethics inevitably leads to destruction. Chapter 4. The Price of Greed. The arrest happened at 7:43 a.m. on December 4th, 2023, in Data Vault's glass-walled executive conference room, where Victoria Chen was conducting a damage control meeting with her remaining leadership team. FBI special agents Jennifer Martinez and Robert Chong entered with the calculated precision of investigators who had spent 2 months ensuring their case was bulletproof. Victoria's hands trembled as they placed her in handcuffs, the metallic click echoing through the office space where 43 employees watched their CEO's empire collapse in real time. The federal indictment unsealed that morning contained 18 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and securities violations that painted a comprehensive picture of Victoria's systematic criminality. Prosecutors revealed that her embezzlement scheme had begun 22 months before Rachel's ouster, starting with small diversions of research funds that escalated into a sophisticated operation involving falsified invoices, phantom vendors, and elaborate money transfers designed to evade detection. The investigation had uncovered $3.2 million in stolen funds, but the actual damage to Data Vault exceeded $12 million when considering the destroyed partnerships, fled customers, and obliterated investor confidence. Financial forensics experts testified that Victoria had created 17 shell companies across 4 jurisdictions, each designed to obscure the money trail that funded her lavish lifestyle, while she simultaneously claimed the company needed aggressive, cost-cutting measures. During the trial that began in February 2024, the prosecution presented 73 pieces of evidence that demonstrated Victoria's deliberate intent to defraud investors, partners, and employees. The most damaging testimony came from Data Vault's former CFO, Marcus Thompson, who had initially participated in the scheme but accepted a plea deal in exchange for his cooperation. His detailed account of Victoria's instructions to manipulate quarterly reports and hide Rachel's contributions transformed him from accomplice to the prosecution's star witness. Victoria's defense team attempted to portray her actions as aggressive but legal business tactics common in Silicon Valley's hyper-competitive environment. They argued that the financial irregularities were accounting errors made during rapid growth, not intentional fraud. This narrative crumbled when prosecutors presented encrypted messages where Victoria explicitly discussed hiding money from auditors and creating false documentation to deceive board members about the company's true financial status. The evidence included a particularly damning email where Victoria had written to an offshore account manager. The partner problem will be resolved by Q3. Ensure all transfers remain untraceable until after the transition. This message, sent 3 months before Rachel's termination, proved premeditation that elevated her crimes from impulsive fraud to calculated conspiracy. While Victoria's trial proceeded, Rachel Yamamoto's Quantum Shield Technologies was securing its position as the legitimate successor to Data Vault's original vision. The $50 million investment from Marcus Webb had enabled Rachel to recruit 18 of Data Vault's top engineers, who joined her company not just for competitive salaries, but for the opportunity to work under ethical leadership. By the trial's conclusion, Quantum Shield had already secured contracts worth $38 million, including deals with 3 companies that had terminated their Data Vault partnerships after the fraud became public. The verdict arrived after 4 days of jury deliberation. Guilty on all counts. Victoria stood motionless as the judge read each conviction, her expression finally cracking as the reality of federal prison replaced her dreams of Silicon Valley dominance. The sentencing hearing 3 weeks later drew widespread media attention, with the judge describing Victoria's crimes as a betrayal of the innovation and trust that makes technological advancement possible. Judge Patricia Hawkins sentenced Victoria to 5 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and ordered restitution of $3.2 million to defrauded investors. The judge specifically noted that Victoria's abuse of her fiduciary duty and the premeditated destruction of her partner's career warranted the maximum sentence within federal guidelines. Victoria's prisoner transfer to the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California, occurred on a rainy March morning, exactly 3 years after she and Rachel had celebrated Data Vault's first million-dollar contract. The minimum security facility housed other white-collar criminals who had similarly destroyed their careers through greed, though few had fallen from such heights or betrayed such trust. The aftermath rippled through Silicon Valley's startup ecosystem, inspiring new disclosure requirements for founding partner agreements and additional scrutiny of financial reports from venture capital firms. Data Vault itself entered bankruptcy within 6 months, its valuable patents acquired by Quantum Shield in an ironic final transfer of assets from the company Victoria had tried to steal to the partner she had betrayed. What's your take on Victoria's downfall? Was justice truly served? Drop your thoughts below and hit subscribe for more deep dives into white-collar crime and Silicon Valley's darkest betrayals.